the date of the letter in which to take an action to move forward, and that we have until essentially the 27th of this month in order to respond, in order to minimize any legal ramifications that the firm would have for any of the work that they have done to this point. And maybe they haven't done any, but regardless, we do have that 45 days. This reduces the city's exposure, and we would have then 90 days from this date in which to prepare maps and to conduct essentially what is considered five public hearings. So we have looked at potential firms. National Demographic Corporation is a firm that has done many of these voter district maps and studies demographically throughout the United States, but primarily California, in order to maintain cities' compliance with the California Voters' Rights Act. As a matter of fact, I believe that Merced County used national demographics, and I know that the city of Merced did. So at this point, the purpose of selecting them would be to develop those maps and to assist the city council through the public hearings. The contract for them would be $17,000, but I would request that it be an amount not to exceed $23,000 in order for them to be at the first public hearing and then probably the first public hearing of the presentation of the map. And I would suggest that if we go forward with this, we would amend the budget and place it into the city manager's office budget in the general fund. Be happy to answer any questions, and any real legal questions I can't answer. I'm going to turn those over to Stacy.
Is there any questions from the council? If not, I'll open it up for public comment. Open up for public comment. Is there anyone in the public that would like to ask a question or discuss this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment and bring it back.
Okay, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I would ask that in that the resolution be in the title be amended, because basically what it says, although we did get it changed to city manager in the resolution, there is another resolution that refers to the position as general manager, and so what we would request is that the title be changed to interim city manager.
Okay, would anyone like to put that in? Mr. Raymond.
I just want to say that the First Amendment to the Bill of Rights grants everybody the right to the freedom of speech, and going to districts silences, in Atwater, a city of 30,000 people, silences the voice of over 22,000 people. Part of freedom of speech is selecting who you want to vote for. And what you're doing is you're limiting down, whether you support me or Councilwoman Vieira or anyone up here or not, that's up to you. And you have the right to do that. Right now, I can help somebody on the other side of, behind the CHP station in the homes over there, where there's some issues going on. That's going to limit who they can contact, who they can come, deal with on a regular basis. I mean, you can still reach out, but then you're bound by your district and who you can reach out to for representation. And I support the right of everybody to have the choice to support who they want, when they want, how they want. That's all I have to say.
Councilman Creighton.
I too want to make my comments on the record that this is no more than a shakedown. We have some people accusing the city of being discriminatory. You have a law firm out of LA. This is nothing more than forcing the local people in Atwater to do something. If the people were coming to the podium on a constant basis saying this is messed up, then by God, we would change it. But here we are being shaken down to do something. And if we don't act, we're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars fighting this. We don't have time. We don't have the money to do this right now. So we got to stop everything we're working on and address this head on. This is just sad. This is absolutely sad. And it completely disappoints me.
don't have a motion. Is there anyone willing to make an motion?
We're going to have to probably approve this tonight under duress. I don't want to make the motion to approve it. I think it's a bunch of bull. But I'm going to make the motion to approve it and under duress. This is totally sad.
Under double duress, I'll second it.
Before you do that, I'd like to make an addition to that resolution that we continue exploring all our legal aspects. Do we need that in there?
I don't think we need to amend the resolution for that. This is a resolution declaring the intent to move forward, but we can definitely continue to explore as this process progresses.
Okay, thank you. Call for the question.
Vieira,
Yes.
Raymond,
No.
Creighton,
Yes.
Vineyard.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Public hearing.
Public hearings. Adopting 2017-2018 fiscal year budget and approving fund expenditures and fund transfers. Amending classification plan and approving salary schedules B-17 effective July 1st, 2017.
Mr. Mayor and Council, maybe it would be best, just for procedural sake, to do the maintenance districts, and then we'll go back to the budget public hearing. That way, I think the maintenance districts will answer a couple of questions that the council had on the budget. Then we'll take time to go through the budget, very similar to how we did it at the special meeting. So maybe not everybody wants to sit through that. If they don't, great. If they do, that's great too, but I just don't want them to sit here if they're mainly concerned about the maintenance districts.
All right.
The council have any problem with that?
No.
Thank you.
All right, so we're moving to reports and presentations from staff. Resolution confirming the engineer's report and ordering the annual levy for the lighting and drainage landscape assessment maintenance districts for fiscal year 2017-2018.
Mr. Mayor and Council, and I'm going to just do the beginning, I'm going to turn some of this over to Scott, but after finding out some of the issues after my first city council meeting on the lighting and landscaping assessment districts, we've done a little more research, and what I can tell you is that the lighting and landscaping districts need to be in front of the assessor for inclusion on the assessment bill prior to our next meeting. In terms of, and the number one issue that was brought up that I've heard so far is obviously general maintenance of the landscaping areas, but also the tree maintenance. And I'm here to assure you that once the budget is adopted, we have a $50,000 contract in the gas tax fund that covers all public rights-of-way, including the landscaping districts. However, and I want to put this on record just so that it's there for future reference and accountability, is that if we find a landscaping district that has a substantial number of trees that need to be taken care of and appears that it will bust the $50,000 budget, then we will look at the reserves and try to include a budget item for the removal of those trees in that landscaping district budget. And many of these districts do have some reserve funds available to take care of just those kinds of items. So that we will give you as an assurance. In the landscaping districts, we have 5 that will be assessed over, and the 2 of them will have increases, the Redwood Estates and the Juniper Meadows, and then Price, Pajaro, and Sandalwood, although being assessed, will not see an increase. In terms of the lighting districts, Schaefer Lakes will see an increase, because if I remember right, that's a new district. No, never mind, I'm speaking out of school. But there are 14 assessed districts that will not see any assessment increases. So Scott, if you want to bail me out of my 1 point and carry.
John, you did a great job. Just to kind of remind the council that we've done all the prerequisite work, the notices, the hearings have been held, public notice, public hearing was held. And so at your last meeting, we had a 2-2 tie on this, so it didn't pass. It also wasn't denied. We're bringing it back for tonight, separated out in 2 different resolutions, so you can consider each one. Item 10 is for the lighting and drainage. That's the resolution 297517. And then item 11 is for the landscape maintenance, and that's 297617. And I think John did a great job summarizing it. Minimal changes. Some properties are not going to be assessed. Quite a few are not going to be assessed because we have reserves. So this is basically a budget for the year and allocations, assessments for the year for operations, and they become pretty essential in some of the districts where we have no reserves. And those are basically the ones where we're trying to levy for the next year. And I concur with City Manager that you do have resources available. So in addition to the proposal for gas tax for street tree maintenance, you've got other resources in these that you can use by contract or additional labor if needed for tree maintenance. So I'll leave it at that. I think, Mayor Pro Tem, we probably want to just maybe address the first one, 297517 for lighting and drainage, and then we can go from there to the secondary one.
Thank you. Any comments from the council? Questions? Councilman Raymond.
Everyone knows how I feel about this. However, I'd be willing to move to approve it, or motion to approve with the caveat it stays at the current rates without the increase.
So we're looking at essentially 6. Is that correct? If I wrote it down correctly.
Yes, there would be, well, under lighting and drainage,
Correct.
there would be 1 that has an increase, and that would be Schaefer Lakes.
How much is that?
And then there's 14 that would be assessed, but no increase in fees.
Mayor Pro Tem and City Council, just so you know, last year there were no assessments for Schaefer Lakes. That's why it shows as an increase. I can tell you that the rates range from $3.79 a parcel to $17.63 a parcel. There is one multifamily parcel that is, it's just one, scheduled at $205. So by and large, it's either $379 or $17.63. That's the assessment for lighting and drainage for Schaefer Lakes area. And the reason why it's an increase is just because it wasn't on the assessment last year. That's the reason why it shows as an increase. It wasn't assessed last year.
Do we have a second to Mr. Raymond's motion? Oh, Councilman Creighton.
Do you need a second, or can I make a comment?
I mean, need a second.
Need a
So we
second,
can discuss
then
it
you can
further.
Make him a
discuss.
comment?
You're allowed to have discussion if you'd like before you decide whether you want to make a second.
Well, I agree with Councilman Raymond. However, on the flip side of that since this is the first time that we're assessing this, Scott, correct?
Well, we have all the different districts, and for Schaefer Lakes, we've done it previously. It just was not assessed last year.
So they weren't charged anything last year?
That's correct.
Okay, so I'm complaining to the city manager about all the streetlights that are out in town, and we need money to pay for those. That's why we pay our taxes, so we don't assess this or we don't do this, then we take it out of what fund?
General fund.
The general fund, which is what? In a deficit?
Yes.
So I just would like to share that with you, and I think it's important to note.
Councilman Raymond?
So it's a double tax. I mean, the property taxes are supposed to cover this type of maintenance, so what we're doing is we're adding to it.
So I'm not hearing a second to Mr. Councilman Raymond's motion, so I presume the motion would die.
Correct.
Councilman Vera?
Well, I have a question. So we collected no lighting and drainage taxes last year for Schaefer Lakes. They weren't reassessed, or we collected none. And where does that leave that district then? Is it in a negative position, or is there currently enough in there to sustain that district or that area?
So Councilmember, on page 26 of the lighting and drainage engineer's report, you have a column that says reserve balance, and you can see 5,008. So you've got a negative reserve balance of $22,000.
And the cost, where it ranges from 375 up to, I know that we have the one that's a multi-unit, so I'm not going to consider that, 375 to 1763, is that based on the size of the parcel, or what is the,
All the rates are set by the engineer's reports when the district's were formed, and so it goes through an analysis of what's needed for the area, how many lots. It's a lot of variables, and that's listed on page 27 of that same report for you. Under 5,008, that's the district number. Mayor Pro Tem Council, I would just point out real quickly too, as the city manager already summarized, the proposal for lighting and drainage is to assess 14 districts. Obviously, many of them are not being assessed for this year, and there are 2 that were assessed last year that there'd be no assessment, one of them being Mellow Ranch 2 in Simon. So I just want to make sure that that's clear for everyone.
It's 14 out of how many?
Let me do some math real quick here.
Well, there's a total of 54 districts, but
Okay.
they're not all lighting districts, lighting and drainage. It's a mixture of lighting, drainage, and then landscape maintenance.
We'll go to Councilman Creighton while you're doing that.
So I just wanted to paint a little bit of a picture of what's going on. Raymond said that it was potential double taxation, which I'm not at all in favor of any tax. However, as these developments come into town, like future development comes into town, those developments, if you live in one, agreed to these type of assessments. The assessment districts are set up when you initially set up a map to come in and build. With that, Public Works has to come out, clean the storm basin, maintain the city street lights. So with that agreement, so that the people that are paying their tax, the old part of town, they don't have to dig deeper in their pocket to pay for the new developments that come into town. So there's logic and reasoning why they do this taxation on this. Do I love it? No, but the development agreed to it, the people moved into the homes agreed to it, and it's a natural process. With this, the city manager and the finance director are working towards better maintenance in those districts. I think it's already started. I think I've seen Public Works out doing several streetlights lately. The direction's being given, things are starting to happen. It doesn't happen all at once, but that's why we're talking about this tonight.
Councilwoman Rivera?
Did you say?
Rivera, sorry. Slip of the tongue, excuse me. Transpose some letters. Councilwoman Vieira.
This is a one-time annual fee assessment? Is that what this is?
Yes, it goes on it goes on the property tax, and it's once.
And how come some years we just miss? Why isn't it assessed every year? Just curious.
Well, Councilmember, there's a variety of reasons. One of them being that in some years you've not wanted to increase rates, or you wanted them to drop off, so we follow your direction. In some cases, we have reserves, so we haven't charged people for it. And I apologize, I was incorrect. I looked at the wrong column. The reserve balance for Schaefer Lake says $99,000, and what's intended to be used this year is $22,000 of that reserve. That's a column right next to it. So there isn't one specific reason, except that, like I explained, many years the councils wanted not to change the rates or not to charge it, which we follow your directions, or these reserves.
Just one or the other. I don't know that we've really gone through the assessment of how we should set reserves, and that's a whole different study. The amount of the reserves will really depend upon the potential drainage issues and what kind of equipment is underground as well as above ground for all of these districts. There's many cities that are starting to say, we don't want to have a reserve over a certain amount, and that is a wise discussion to have. We can't have it tonight because I don't think we have enough information on it, nor have we done how much equipment is there, and a lot of this has to do with storm drainage pumps, et cetera. But I think that would be a wise investment of money for the next year when you start to do these assessments.
There's no other questions or comments from the council. I'd like to open it up to the public.
I'm sorry, I thought my button was on.
Go ahead, Councilwoman Vera.
So Scott, can you confirm there's a $99,000 reserve balance with a potential use of $22,000 for this year? So we would still have a $77,000 reserve balance,
Right, as the indigenous report would be $77,000, that's correct.
just for that one area, not for everything together? Okay.
Open up for a public comment. If there's anyone who'd like to make a comment on this, please come forward. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the diocese.
His died.
His died.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. I'll second it. Call for the question.
Creighton?
Yes.
Raymond?
No.
Vieira?
No.
Vineyard?
Yes.
Motion does not pass. Moving forward. Okay.
We'll move it on.
Okay. Resolution confirming the engineer's report and ordering the annual levy for the Landscape Assessment Maintenance District for fiscal year 2017-2018.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I did a generalization of this as well. Scott, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I apologize, I think this is on. No, you did a great job summarizing it. Basically, only a few districts to be assessed for this year, and only one increase in Juniper Meadows, and that's it. All the other proposed assessments are consistent with prior years.
Councilman Raymond.
Mr. McBride, just want to confirm, this is the new subdivision on Juniper?
That is included in it.
Okay.
Any questions from the council? Any other questions? Councilwoman Vera.
Yes, for the one district that we're wanting for the increase, can you tell us what the reserve balance and the anticipated or the potential use this year is?
Sure, that's on page 17 of your engineer's report, and that is 5027 is the district. The reserve balance is negative $9,000. And Councilmember Raymond, I believe this includes the new court and a few existing units that were built that they've been annexed or merged together, so it's not just the new court, it is all those units there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Scott, what's the potential use this year? I'm sorry. I had an iPad problem, so I didn't get this until really late today, so my apologies for not knowing where everything's at.
To answer your question correctly, what was it?
Well, I know the reserve balance was negative 9,000.
Right.
So what's our potential use? What are we going to need this year?
If I'm reading this correctly, they're going to balance $2,334.
Any other questions? Any questions from the public? Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
Second. Call for the question?
Vera?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Creighton?
Yes.
Vineyard?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Back to 9.
All right, moving back to item number 9, public hearings, adopting 2017-2018 fiscal year budget and approving fund expenditures and fund transfers, amending classification plan, and approving salary schedules B-17 effective July 1st, 2017.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and City Council, I realize this is a public hearing, but I think some generalizations and some specifics as to direction that we received in the first two meetings is appropriate. So in the revenue picture, we recognized, based upon the number of permits that have been issued to date and the possibility of lots and additional permits, that we changed the revenues from $350,000 to $400,000. It's still a relatively light increase in the revenues, because we saw as much as, I believe, $547,000 last calendar year in terms of the budget, or last fiscal year in terms of building permits, but just to be on the safe side, we only increased it to $400,000. We decreased the police tow yard revenue from $70,000 to $50,000. I believe that I put in a weekly report that we increased that, but it was actually increase in expenditures, and I missed my opportunity to proofread my report, so that was incorrect. We are establishing an electronic payment process to recover the cost of the use of credit cards when processing any kind of payment, but primarily utility payments. The city's administrative overhead allocations for the non-departmental expenses are being moved over to the enterprise funds in the amount of an additional 10%, from 30% to 40%. As directed by the City Council, the code enforcement officer cost is now being distributed to 4 funds: general fund, water, sewer, and the sanitation funds, evenly at 25% per fund, and that 15% of the 5 police sergeants, actually it should be 6 sergeants cost, or no, 5, because we've got an administrative sergeant, I'm sorry. Cost is being allocated to the sewer and water enterprise fund for emergency preparation, and it's really actually emergency or maybe safety reasons more so than just anticipating that we're going to have a major emergency. The expenditures, the City Council budget was reduced in terms of its travel from $10,505 to $6,000. I think that's sufficient at this point, although I think this is one that the council may want to look at mid-year. City administration and clerk department, the assistant city clerk, executive assistant, was moved, or is added to the city manager's office, as well as the city manager position is an added position. The city clerk position is moved from human resources to the city administration, and a minutes clerk temporary position is added as well. Overtime is being reduced from 1,000 to 300, and the travel and conferences is reduced $50, but basically it was something that we saw was kind of a duplication. In terms of the finance department, they eliminated part-time help in the amount of $17,680. And since we don't have a line item for mileage reimbursement, what I did at this point is take the car allowance from the 4,200 and reduced it to a reimbursement of up to as much as $500. And that would cover as much as 917 miles if the finance director were to drive that many miles in her own vehicle. Human resources, the car allowance was eliminated, and we put in $1,605 for reimbursement of mileage, and that would be a 3,000 mile provision. If they don't drive that far, it isn't expended. If they do, then we have enough budget for it. And the overtime was reduced from 3,000 to 2,000. Non-departmental, reduced information technology charges from $279,250 to $259,250. The police department, the administration budget, we reduced the overtime from 40 to 25,000, and we added additional towing fee expenses in the amount of 25,000, anticipating some additional expenses. Community Development Department, we reduced the permit tech under the professional services from 43,000 to 20,500, and the overtime was reduced from 8,000 to 4,000. The car allowance was done away with, and a mileage reimbursement of $1,605 for the year. Community Services, we added a full-time position of administrative assistant with its prime purpose to keep the community center open and to allow the supervisor to be away from the community center for more hours of the day in order to supervise other programs and employees. The overtime was eliminated. It was 3,200, and we reduced it to 0. And then we reduced the memberships down to 310 from the 460 that was originally presented. The furlough costs, retain the furlough for all non-safety related departments. Under Measure V, we moved the project design and engineering costs at $100,000, and other projects, including grant match of $37,500, is eliminated. And then the uniform and clothing allowance in gas tax was reduced from $5,800 to $4,600, with the corresponding balance of $1,200 in the Measure V expenditure area. And then finally, under overtime and community facilities district, we reduced that from $25,000 to $10,000, and the water fund, sewer fund, $25,000 was added to both funds because we realized that we did not have the rate studies for either one of those accounts included in the budget, and the majority of the expenses will be next fiscal year. So the sum and substance, and we're still discussing the fire budget, but the sum and substance right now is the general fund is projected to have an operating surplus of about $248,000 for next fiscal year, which will definitely help us. So that's the generalization. I'm proposing that we go through the other budgets page by page, if that's what you would like to do. I'll give you some generalizations of what I've touched in the couple of days that we had available to us, and then open it to any questions that you have. So if that's acceptable, I'll go from there.
That's fine.
Okay, so I'm going to go down because it's easier for me to stand up and talk and look at all of you and see if we've got questions. Not missing anybody's question. I want to make sure that I get the right page. Then I'll be wrong. Yeah, the iPad, but, yes, yes. Yes, yes, they do. So what I'd like to do is if you go to, I just want to, this is more for information. I don't know that there's a lot of things that you'll want to change, but this is for your information.
Could you-
Go to
can you
page 54.
Hold 1 second.
Sure,
Can we ask questions on what you just covered before we jump into that?
fire away.
Okay.
Councilman Craig.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem, thank you. Let's go straight to the car allowances. We have different, we wanted it cut out and then provide a staff car or pool car or the federal mileage rate. And I see you're putting a cap, not to exceed. Why wouldn't all the department heads have the same type cap and just budget that? What's the methodology for that?
Well, community development, in the records that I've seen so far, community development and human resources both have quite a few, or have quite a few miles that they drive for city purposes. We have one car that's available to drive, so if there's two people that need it, or if there's another staff person that needs to run an errand, we're kind of limited in the number of cars that we have, and I think mileage reimbursement is far better than having a city car sit.
So I'm not familiar with us just having down to one car. Maybe you guys can enlighten me how we ended up to just one car now and we can't use existing like volunteer car or something else. We're just trying to cut costs and how that works. What's the scheduling? If I wanted to use a pool car and as a department head, what's the process?
I would love to tell you that I know exactly the process on that. What I was, unless I'm mistaken, we have one pool car, right? Two, I'm sorry, we have two.
Okay,
I missed it by 100%.
You did. But I get where you're going with the cap. So I want this focus back on that because sometimes the cars are down or everybody's got a car, everybody's going to training. So just clarify again why we're doing the cap and for which ones.
Okay, so there's a cap for all department directors. The chief of police has a vehicle that is assigned to that individual. We're going to need a public works director at a minimum.
Right.
And that's another position. At this point, I don't know if there's a vehicle, well, there probably is a vehicle.
I don't think
Or
there's a
There
couple
may
of
be a
beat-up trucks
vehicle
out there.
that will be available to that individual. But at this point, there's a lot less expenditure for mileage reimbursement than there is to go out and buy a car, maintain it, keep it in the fleet, and keep it clean and usable for the people who need to use it.
So we were about 24,000 a year. You've reduced it to roughly 3,000 now.
Correct.
If somebody did need to do something and they didn't have that cap or whatever, they could still use their vehicle at the federal rate and we'd still pay them, reimburse them for their expenses.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So, I mean, sometimes people want to use the city vehicle, but I can tell you that every place we've done that, where we've had a couple of pool cars, it'll get used a lot by, and we don't have this problem, but police and fire for their schooling, and so it'll be gone at weeks at a time.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Vieira, you had rung in originally.
My turn?
Bullet.
Okay.
Councilman Raymond.
So, Mayor Pro Tem, Mr. Bramble, as we're going to be going forward here, as we get through each section, can we have a moment where we can allow the public to come up with any comments or questions they may have?
That's okay by
I
me.
don't have a problem with
Okay.
that. Just leave it open. Okay, then we'll just open the public hearing, and
Okay.
we'll leave it open until the end of the, this section.
Thank you.
Other questions on the initial presentation, or? Okay, so this is as much for your information as well as obviously approval. But if you go to page 54 of the budget, general fund capital projects. Everybody caught up? So these are projects that obviously of capital nature. A lot of these are grants, and I will just highlight a couple of them. And
John?
then- Yes.
Just for everybody else's purpose, they're also putting them on the overhead for us, if you want to keep
Oh,
it up that way, it's easier.
Wonderful. Thank you. I figured that LaQuinder would be way ahead of me. So, the first item, I know there's been a lot of discussion about trees and the inventory of trees, which is a legitimate question because they are a tremendous asset to communities, especially in the valley. And so we're about to get the finished product. We still have some work to be done, and this is partially on a grant. So it's something to look forward to, and it's definitely going to help us in our planning and our maintenance based upon what I've been told up to this point. There's a couple of, so we do have a traffic signalization synchronization project, and if I remember right, that's on Winton Way, correct? Yeah, in Atwater. So Applegate and Atwater. So it's a project that hopefully will allow for the better flow of traffic in that area. We do have two, what are, and when you see CMAQ, it's the Air Quality Act. So it's funds that we get through the Merced County Association of Governments, which gets it from the federal government and the state. So we've got two pedestrian bike infill projects, one on Juniper and the other one on Buhack. We do have another part of the match for the Buhack sidewalk infill in another budget, and we'll get to that. And the only other one that I want to really focus on is the Phase 2 pedestrian improvement projects. It's a design project, and it's $44,973, and for some reason, I can't tell you where it's at, because I don't have my notes. Scott, do you have the location on that one?
Yeah, so,
This is not what I-
several years ago, we did a design project around Eileen Colburn School, Olive Avenue, Herman, Marguerite, Mitchell, Sierra Vista, a few other areas, and we received grant funding for a portion of it. This is to complete the rest of the plans that we already had that were off the shelf. MCAG had funds they needed to allocate right away. We had a project that was pretty much designed, and so it was a good match for us.
So some expenses, we're obviously going to get a couple of dump trucks. I mean, there's been a lot of work done by Lori on this, and she deserves kudos because she writes a pretty good grant, and it seems like they get definite attention from MCA.
She makes it rain money.
She makes it rain money. Any questions on these projects that are in front of you? I just wanted to highlight those.
I have, Mayor Pro Tem,
Go ahead.
the traffic synchronization, this is, I don't know how this would work into that. Around town, there's, majority of the stoplights are like in some kind of weird phasing default mode maybe, that when you come up, you approach them, they don't automatically trigger. Is there any money in that, Scott, to look at that, or how do we address that type of issue?
This is just for that one project. This is just for Olive Avenue, Atwater Boulevard, Winton Way, Sycamore, Applegate, Applegate Commerce, Bell Lane, Bell Drive. It's very specific to that. What you're talking about is maybe looking at the timing or the organization of all the other lights, which is.
Yeah, where does that come from when we work on those?
It's just kind of a maintenance assessment thing, looking at how it's set up, how it's set up.
Like the RTIF money or?
Well, you could use RTIF, but CMAQ dollars are probably the most efficient way to approach those, because it's not an inexpensive way to deal with, especially major streets, and especially major streets that have railroads
Okay.
crossings.
Good, all right.
Okay. If you turn to Measure H, which is on page 55, you'll note that this is still, we're spending more money than we're taking in on Measure H this year, something that we need to continue to look at. We did make one minor adjustment on the overtime, and we reduced the overtime from 75 to 60,000 at this point, just to try to give ourselves a lower target.
Just
And
so
then the-
everybody's clear, I believe the extra comes out of what reserve we have left in Measure H funds, is that correct?
That's correct. And what I will tell you is that if you look at rents and leases, which is at the bottom of the page, that's for the latter company. Next page is Ferrari Ranch project. This is pretty much developer-driven. When we have expenses, we ask for reimbursement. So at this point, we anticipate about $100,000 worth of activity. I'm not sure who's going to head that up yet, but I will keep you apprised. If you go to page 58, we've already talked about Measure V. 59 is a police grant fund, which has got no proposed activities in this fiscal year. Hopefully, we'll start to get some additional COPS funds, or at least some replacement, or allow to maintain the police officers that we presently have, but at this point, we do not have authorization. Flip over gas tax, and what I want you to do is to go to page 68, which is Parks and Recreation Fund. And let me stop there, and if there's any questions from the audience, maybe we should take those.
Don't be bashful.
Okay, Parks and Recreation Fund, we're utilizing facility taxes that new development provides when they build units or commercial. Well, not in Parks and Recreation, but residential. You'll see that we're spending $62,000 more than we have in ongoing revenues, or we project. But what I will tell you is we got $1.4 million in this fund available for capital improvements. We can't use this for maintenance, but we can use it for capital improvements. And the capital improvements that are proposed is a mower for the Parks Department, a booster pump for Osborne Park, miscellaneous playground equipment in the amount of $125,000, and wood fiber playground safety.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Go ahead.
With that, what about like slurry sealing parking lots in the parks? Or repairing the pothole, like Osborne's pretty tore up, and we're gonna lose the whole thing if we don't seal it.
You know, I'd have to read the law on that, unless, I'm not going to ask the attorney. Scott, do you have any, I'm not sure that we can do that. That's a maintenance item,
Okay.
and it has to be a true capital improvement, but I'll check, we'll check.
So maybe the installation of handicap stalls or something like that, and some cleanup work around the snack bar restrooms? Some new freshening up over there?
So long as it's not considered maintenance. We
Okay.
can build the building.
It's like a trash enclosure that never existed before, and handicap parking that's more adequate.
We'll look at it.
Okay.
I'm not going to guarantee anything, and I'll
Okay.
try to get back to you. Because it's pretty specific, and if we don't use it properly, the developers have the right to go back and take the funds. And all of them, unfortunately. Any other questions on this one? Audience? Okay. The next area is on page 71. It's the successor agency to redevelopment. This is both a blessing and potentially one where it will go away. Obviously, the redevelopment law is in the process of winding down. Successor agencies potentially could be abandoned and placed with the county as of calendar year 2018. At this point, we're the beneficiary of $187,000 of revenue from this fund. If you go to page 17, you would see a corresponding $187,000 revenue to the general fund, which is definitely a benefit. This potentially could go away as of 2018, but at this point, we're still in pretty good shape. But the benefit would be that we would receive additional property tax, especially from the savings from the bond issue. So we'll see how that all transpires as we go down the road. And why do I not have what I want? Okay, any questions? I have some notes that are critical to all this. I spent all this time writing notes on the train coming back, and I have none of them. They're up there someplace. Okay, Community Facilities District. We have one. These are formed at the beginning of a new development. I will tell you that no matter how expensive the homes are, up to about $1 million per home, property taxes never quite cover the cost of the services. Now, that $1 million home theoretically has more disposable income, so you hope they pay more in sales taxes, but there's no guarantee. So that's one of the reasons that community facility districts and maintenance districts are put together. So this is a small one, and it generates about $9,000 in revenue, and this year we'll only have $500 in basically administrative fees. You follow on to maintenance districts, page 75. As we discussed earlier, we have 54 of them total. We account for them all in one fund, which is an acceptable way to do it. We do have, as of this fiscal year, 2 positions funded in this budget that are parks and street maintenance workers. These expenses are pretty much on target for what we're looking for. And once again, once we see trees that really need, whether it be removal or trimming or whatever it may be, we may go to those districts and pull from the reserve funds. Any questions?
Any questions from the audience?
Okay, Community Facilities District, police field operations. Actually, it's got a positive in terms of the annual expenditures. We'll actually anticipate receiving $20,000 more in revenues than we'll expend. However, this is one of those funds where we are in the red in the overall. So in looking at this, this is primarily the Detective Bureau. We've not made any changes at this point. I talked to the chief about the overtime, but when we have special assignments of police officers in the Detective Bureau, some of those cases can go quite lengthy, and probably would be wise to keep this number at what it is. Questions? Audience? Okay, Water Enterprise Fund. So obviously, this is where fees are to cover the cost of the operation. To some degree, we're at that point. The one addition that we made is we had to add $25,000 because we had forgotten to budget for the rate study for water, and this is a pretty important one that we take on. I can just kind of as a reminder to everybody, if you haven't thought about it for a while, state mandate is that we add meters to all properties by 2025. So actually, a rate study will be an incentive for people to turn over or to adopt meters. I mean, we had a classic case presented to us just at the budget meeting the last time where an apartment complex is on a flat rate and definitely could save money by having meters, because it's usually one of those where you've got a certain amount of consumption, and you charge the sewer on that same rate, but usually your consumption doesn't all go through the sewer line. So just need to look at that. Another trick is that you ask businesses as well as apartment complexes to have 2 meters, one for irrigation and one for the units.
Now, we're looking at a grant or something similar to what Gustine did or something.
I believe
to
that's
help with
correct.
those?
And we also have a settlement where we have some money that is available to buy meters. Lori, yes, we are, because I'm going to talk to the consultant on Friday. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Councilman.
And Lori doesn't know that. Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
So when we're doing this rate study,
Yes.
is there a formula for staffing per 1,000 people in town, or gallons per million gallons pumped per day? It just seems like we have average type issues in the water department. We don't have near enough people covering what needs to be covered. And it doesn't seem like a very big crew for 30,000 population.
Actually, especially when we get meters, but it's usually on number of meters and miles of water lines. And then do you have, how many wells you have, do they have wellhead protection? So I don't know that the rate study analysis will give us a good picture of that, but there are some other studies that.
So how do we
can look at.
determine something like that when we're going forward with this? I just see it just looks, they always need a little bit more help than what they have.
There are some other ways to figure out the standards, and we'll just have to look at that in terms of I don't know that we need another study, but we can use some things that are out there through the International City County Management Association, the American Public Works Association. I know the American Public Works Association has
I'm really
standards.
curious to find out where
Yeah.
we're at on that, whether we're high, low, or in the middle. I suppose we're pretty low, but that goes for sewer also.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Would you like a little break?
Okay, so any more questions on water before Cindy drinks? Okay, so we do have some money in here for well 20 and for the development of well 20, which would be a new well. I apologize, I don't have the location. Brian, can you help me with that one?
Pardon?
Well 20.
Well 20 is drilled. We're waiting for Scott's confirmation on the TCP.
Is that the golf course?
Yes.
Okay, so we had an old well site there, and then you went 75 feet or something away and punched another one, and it came out with a contaminant in it?
Well, they'll have TCP,
Okay.
but we're waiting to find out what the MCL was going to be. Finally came out with it. So now we're waiting for the litigation to find out if we can get the vessels to do all the plumbing everything all at once.
Okay, so where I'm going with that is, we talked about Ferrari Ranch back a few slides. I think we have another well site
That's well 22.
on Green Sands, correct?
It's going to be on Avenue 1.
Avenue 1. So as we plan out, I don't know that we have a current update on the master plan for Water, Scott? Is it? Does it identify any location out in the Ferrari project area? So is there a way to rotate that, make that the next priority, and then we'll have infrastructure there and just bring it back in? That's just a kickstart, another thing out there. Instead of 22 over there, move it to Ferrari, then tie it back in.
So you're saying well 22,
To look at that, look at the feasibility of reprioritizing it, finding a different location in the Ferrari project, because that project's gonna at least need, a half a well, a whole well, 2 wells, I don't know. But find something in that area, so when we start building this infrastructure, we're doing it where the growth is gonna be at, then we can tie it back into loop it back into the system. Just look at that is what I'm asking.
okay.
So let me, just so I'm on the same page with you, instead of putting 22 on Avenue 1, you want to say it out on Ferrari Ranch, or you want to make that an additional new well?
22 will always have to come in over, the number 22, instead of making it over at Avenue 1, try to do the Ferrari project, we still need a well over in Avenue 1
Right.
per the water study. But I'm just reprioritizing it and then loop it back in, we get the same goal, but we have a fresh well potentially in a new development.
And this, because we've identified, well, we have had, and we've talked about this, we will probably come back, circle back with the water study as well as the decision as to which well should be evaluated.
Councilman Raymond?
Yes, we have a question from Ms. Emery.
That's
Yeah,
a definite no according
I
to
don't
Commissioner
believe
Bragg.
that that's going to be the situation.
Would you, just for the sake of things, just come to the podium, that way we make sure we have you on the record, please? Thank you.
Helen Amaran, 4860 Clover Avenue. And there was a discussion of the Ferrari Ranch being on the Meadowbrook water lines. Am I wrong or right?
Yeah, Council, if it's okay with you, hopefully the mic's on. There is a portion of the Ferrari project that will be served by Meadowbrook. That's the area that's already served by Meadowbrook. That's the area around Valley. The rest will not be served by Meadowbrook. It'll be a city responsibility. We have an agreement that was executed with them to kind of set up boundaries of service, and the way we're approaching it is consistent with that agreement that we've executed.
That's interesting.
So what he's saying is everything that's on Meadowbrook stays? Nothing changes for those?
The Meadowbrook Water Company that's out that
Yeah,
direction was
that are
supposed to
serving-
serve, according to my understanding, was supposed to serve the Ferrari Ranch.
Well, I think what Scott said, the new annexation is coming in out there. It'll still serve that portion, right?
I will never be connected to the city of Atwater, because I have my own well, so. But there was, in fact, I'll find the paperwork. There was a whole discussion that Ferrari Ranch would be served by Meadowbrook Water Company.
I think what Scott's saying is that discussion did happen, and the final thing is it will be served by the city of Atwater, is what he's saying.
So because well 22 has got a location, we'll obviously have to go through a process to make sure that council is aware of where we're going with that. Okay, wastewater enterprise fund. This is another one where this one is one where we're financially whole. Service charges did go up 1.6%. Based upon the consumer price index and the additional cost of especially electricity, because unfortunately, we're seeing some pretty healthy increases in that. We do have 6 people for maintenance of the lines and lift stations, et cetera. We're proposing a $25,000 increase in this expenditure for professional services for the rate study as well. So you're right, 6 for the number of miles. I mean, if you just take the 100, or the 400 miles of
Yep.
center line that we have in the city, we probably have that much, if not more, of sewer, or wastewater lines. And so it's going to be, it's, staff's pretty thin.
Yep.
Questions on this?
I do have one question, Mayor Pro Tem.
Go ahead.
Our regulatory things for Public Works, where's that identified in the budget? Like for the stormwater phase 2, the education components for recycling, water conservation, where are we putting all that? Is that like one area, or is it kind of just fall into people's duties?
Oh, you mean in terms of, I haven't gotten that far into the organization.
Okay.
I'm sure that it's
somewhere in
probably
there
picked
now,
up, but it's not, I can tell you that it took a couple of other cities a couple of years to identify who is going to be responsible for what, especially in those areas.
So maybe a footnote or something could be added
Yeah.
next year's budget that we identify that. The reason I bring that up is that there's several landscape companies that cut the grass in town and they blow everything out into the street, which then the sanitation department has to take care of that with a street sweeper. And then whatever they don't get goes in the storm drain, and then the storm drain guy's got to clean all that out of the storm drain. So somebody managing that would probably save us quite a bit of money. And it's a difficult position to do, but
That's true. Any other questions, ideas? Okay, citizens? Okay, sanitation, which is run by, we have a contract with Republic. Once again, kind of a we're not spending more than we're taking in. Our rates are adequate to cover the cost of the services. There are no substantive changes to this, other than I will tell you that we've got 3 pieces of equipment that we're going to purchase: a leaf pickup truck, a stump grinder, and a trash truck.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Go ahead.
Previous, before your time, the mayor talked about parking the street sweeper to save costs. The street sweeper's in this fund, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So are we, through you to the Public Works Director, are we currently running the street sweeper? Or what are we doing there?
Right now, my street sweeper is off on this building. They actually have, so I don't have anybody else to run right now.
Okay.
They just shut down, unless we do have a big issue with the handrail. I don't have anybody to get out there to take it out.
So that's pretty tight to be limited to one person that can operate it. What's limiting us from having another Public Works employee drive that?
That's, well, I don't have $5 to take care of somebody else and
So that only funds one and only.
At this point, I think one of the things that we probably should take a good hard look at, especially as we go forward, is whether this should be a contract service, or whether we add to the responsibilities, or we make it an add-on responsibility. I don't know what the union contract says in terms of having a person qualified to run the sweeper. So I think there's a little research that has to be done there.
Okay, thank you.
But if we only have one, and given the fact that we've guaranteed the air quality management district, that we will keep
And we're getting ready to go
our
into
streets,
the
clean,
leaf falling
et cetera.
season pretty quick too.
Yeah. Okay, any questions on recycling and collection of trash? Okay, so the final areas are internal service funds. They are funded by the other operations of the city, so each operation receives a charge from building maintenance, equipment maintenance, as well as for technology. Right now, the expenses and the revenues kind of balance out. In building maintenance, we have 2 people. They both work 24 hours a week, so they're part-time.
Can you stop right there?
Sure.
You know, my next question is going to be on the 24 hours versus 19 or 35 hours.
I'm sorry, what?
The question is on the part-time,
Oh.
we show 24,
Yeah, we're
where I
gonna,
understand a certain hour point, benefits kick in or they don't kick in lieu pay, all this other stuff. Why would we be at 24 if we're restricted to 19?
probably just because of the coverage, and I think what we're gonna have to do is evaluate this staffing over the year as to whether we should have a full-time and maybe a part-time. I don't have a good feel for everything that they do. I'm sure that we've got quite a bit of square footage that they take care of, but I don't have a good enough handle on that for how long I've been here, so.
Okay.
Councilwoman Vera?
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on that. From my understanding, over 20 hours, the employees become eligible for insurance in lieu of and all the other benefits. Is that correct?
Not all of the other benefits, they're limited based upon the number of sick days they can have a year, but under PERS, and I'm going to have to, we weren't subject to the same thing in any of the other cities I've worked in California, so Gina, you're going to have to help me there.
So my question here is, Gina, we have 24-hour employees. What additional benefits, if they worked what we now consider a full work week of 32 hours, what additional benefits would they be eligible for? Or at 24 hours, are they already pretty eligible for everything?
No, at 24 hours, they're only eligible for medical. You have to work a minimum of 30 to get dental, vision, short-term disability, life insurance.
What about retirement?
Retirement, they get on day 1 if they're regular employees.
So we are paying retirement for 24. So looking, just a thought, at 24 hours, we're already being hit with the most expense. So 6 more hours a week is really only going to cost us that hourly wage, correct?
6 more hours would be the hourly rate and the dental, vision, and life insurance and short-term disability premiums.
But those 4 are pretty much the biggest bulk of what our responsibility is, we're already paying. I'm thinking the short-term disability, the dental and the vision is minor compared to what we're already paying.
We are self-funded for our dental and vision, so we pay the claims. So those can be up to $2,000 to $3,000 per person.
And where I'm going with this is 24 hours a week versus 32 hours a week. It's an additional 6 hours for the employee, which I think would be a minimal amount for the city to incur, even though I know we're trying to cut back and save money. And just walking around our buildings, there's horrible amounts of deferred maintenance. We have walls that are completely unpainted. Our carpets are filthy, and without maintenance, they're going to have to be replaced. I'm just thinking it's worth an additional 6 hours we've already, to me, incurred the largest amount going over the 20 hours. So I'd like to see these 2 positions incur an additional 6 hours if it's something where they can help maintain our buildings. Just from my experience at home, if you don't take care of your home, it will fall down around you. And looking at our city offices, they're in need of cleaning, painting, just general maintenance. And so I would think that just with the hours they're working, these 2 employees, there's too much there for them.
I don't disagree with you. I will tell you that neither one of these positions will take care of your painting issue. Probably most of it will be the surface maintenance. I think one of the things I'd like to do is go back and take a look at these. We can always amend the budget we could do that next month. If we find that that is the best resolution, if there's another one, we'd like to bring it to you.
What employees do we have, where the type of maintenance that I'm looking for, where are we going to find those employees? Because just like when we got ready to move you in, I mean, this city building here, walking through it, there's holes in the walls where things have been taken up or taken down. Just, there's a lot of deferred maintenance. What employee that we have can we look for to do that type of work?
We don't have that employee, but I would suggest strongly that we look at a contract with painting contractors or electricians, because we're not going to be able to keep those people busy I mean, we might when we first hire them, but then we've got them. So it's far more effective to contract that service out, and I think I would like to come back to you with a proposal that gives you some options as to how to address those issues.
And these this job position right here, they're not allowed to do that type of stuff? They haven't done it in the past? What is the reason why they can't do it if it's maintenance on the building and that's maintenance that we're looking for?
Well, maintenance on the building, usually, this is like a custodian. It's just a different name for a custodian. So that's what their job description is. If we change their job description, then we'd have to add duties and responsibilities or specific skills, then we would have to look for a different kind of a person. They might be able to do it, but and I'm not disparaging the two people, because I really don't know.
No,
them
it's
that well.
where it says building maintenance worker, that's just, I get it now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can bring those comparisons back to us then.
Yeah.
Please.
Okay, anything else on this?
So is there enough money in that fund, if you were to identify maybe the 6 hours that Councilwoman Vieira wanted, or increase or decrease, whatever you want to do with the 2 employees, but in that fund, to do the type of projects that she asked for, maybe a repaint here or a carpet replacement or something, those would be RFPs we would go to. Are there any funds to do those type of activities, is what my question is.
Actually, these are going to come out of existing funds that we already have. Obviously, City Hall would be general fund minus 40%, but.
So I'm asking, is this budget's pretty much spent? This
It's
line
pretty
item?
much spent, well, it's spent, and the revenues are taken out of the other funds. But we do have some flexibility in some of the other funds, so we'll just have to look at it. What we do here impacts budgets in other areas. Anything else? Audience? Okay. Equipment maintenance fund, we have one individual. I didn't get an opportunity to go through how many pieces of equipment we have, but I can tell you that it's an impressive number for one individual to take care of. So at this point, there are no specific changes to this budget. We seem to be doing pretty well with one part-time mechanic at 27 hours. So this
Those 2 mechanics, correct?
is it two
Full-time-
Yes. two
Full-time and part-time, right, Brian?
Yes, I'm sorry. One full-time, one mechanic 2, and one mechanic 1 at part-time. Yes.
So Mike, I have a question there, Pro Tem.
Go ahead.
This fund, who's responsible for this fund?
This is Public Works,
So that'd be the Public Works Director.
correct.
Inside that, inside that fund would be all the maintenance of the PD cars, all the maintenance of the City Hall cars, et cetera, et cetera.
Anything that moves, that has
Okay.
wheels or mowers or in some cases like trailers, but if it has wheels, it's going to go over there.
Okay. So the costs are pretty general. I don't see like, more line item detail of interdepartment stuff. Where would I find that at?
Well,
If I want to
actually,
know everything that PD has maintenance on, where would I go to find all that?
you wouldn't find it in the budget. There's probably more detail. I can get you that list.
Does that exist
I don't know if it
This-
exists, but I'm sure it probably does.
This whole fund basically is being allocated to all the other funds, so based on how many police cars we have or all that stuff, so that cost is being allocated. So this whole amount, $564,000, it's being allocated to all the funds.
Okay, where I'm going with it is that, and I'm gonna use PD as an example, I don't have any issues or anything with it, but they're the biggest fleet that we have next to Public Works being equipment and other things. How can the chief track what he's got for each, the detectives cost this much per year per vehicles, then the volunteers, and then the regular patrol, and then I've got light equipment, categorize all that, where would that be, or do we need to create that?
Well, actually,
Because for accounting purposes, the public works director is gonna ask the chief or the community development director, what are you guys spending all this on, and if,
at this point, I don't believe that this organization has broken it down that way.
so footnote.
So, well, but be careful with your footnote. I'll get you the information, but the consequences of that footnote is that you're going to need some additional people to oversee the keeping of those records and the allocation of funds. Because
Well, I think it'd still stay inside this fund, but just more, it'd be 7,000 whatever, then a department, and then that fund is what I'm looking for. I'm not looking to divert anything.
I understand that. I mean, I've come from a couple of organizations that have very sophisticated tracking of how much each piece of equipment costs, and it's allocated to each department. At this point, we don't
probably
have
too
the
much
staffing to really take care of that. And there's computer programs, but you still got to have somebody to run the computer program and make sure it's right. So we'll get you the list of equipment, but I don't think we're quite there at this point. If we had a need, I can give you 5 other needs that this city desperately needs more than that right now, anyway. That might be for something down the road. But I would say, unless I've missed my guess, police officers are probably a #1 priority.
You have a comment, Ms. Dash? Can you, yeah. Come on up.
Do you think it's better to be safe than sorry? When you come in, Paul, I know where you're getting, I think. When you're looking at this, and I know it's going to cost the city some money, but you have 1.5 maintenance folks, mechanics, and they are up to their hindies and alligators every day, trying to keep all the vehicles, police, everybody else that drives a city vehicle in good running, safe order. And I think I can probably tell you that that doesn't happen, and I'd really hate to see anybody get in a car and drive out and the wheel fall off, or, something happens, they get asphyxiated from the fumes coming from the engine of a public works vehicle or city manager's car or whoever. So I just think it would behoove us to maybe throw a little more money in the pot, make that part-time guy full-time, then you'd have a little more help. I don't know if that's where Paul's coming from, but I have to agree with him. I'd rather see us pay a little bit more money, and the money we're saving from giving some of these department heads a free car, and they're not even using the car, they don't have the car, then let's put the money to something that's going to make it safe for our employees to drive those vehicles.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. So on page 96 is internal services for employee benefits, information technology, and risk management. As you can see, and once again, all of this comes from other departments. It doesn't generate its own set of funds. So if you notice in risk management, there's a fairly large expenditure versus revenues, and we usually work off of reserves in the insurance pool, although we've got to talk about that too. Information technology, it's a little more than what we're taking in, but I think we're at that point where we need to spend a little more on our information technology. It's $20,000, it's not 200. So, and we're hoping that, and most of this, as I understand it, will probably be going to the police new system, because we're going to have to do some technology issues, even with the RIM system that we're about to project that we're about to enter. So employee benefits, this is really to cover the other pension employee benefits for retirees. And as you can see, we've got charges of about, from all of the funds, of $646,000. We're fortunate to have it at this rate right now, because I can tell you that in some future years, in the audit report, talks about 1.2, 1.3 million. So we're working up to it. We're self-funding and funding on an ongoing basis. It's a good way to do it right now, but I think we're going to have to talk about other ways to finance this in the future.
You're talking about CalPERS.
These are more like health benefits, not CalPERS. CalPERS is a whole nother one.
Class, what do you call it? Tier employees, 1, 2, 3.
We may have to look at a fourth tier
Okay.
at this point, what that may be. I can't tell you what it is, but we've got a pretty large liability, and it will just continue if we continue with, even with the tier 1, or the fourth tier, whichever.
Right, I get what you're saying.
So risk management is workers' compensation, liability, both property and accidents, as well as, I'm sure we have a boiler someplace, so I'm sure we have some boiler insurance. That's usually not very much money. At this point, we're in pretty good shape, but we do have a number of litigation cases that we have to be cognizant of and mindful. Information technology is basically just that. We have one new project in here. That's opengov.com. It's a good program. Actually is, in doing a little research, there's people that do use it, but its primary purpose is more for the employees and sometimes council to check records and to have a good handle on how we spend our money. So it's an interesting tool. It's going to take a tremendous amount of time. Right now I'm looking at an interim finance director that probably could help us through the next 3 months to maybe get us on the opengov.com system because they've had that experience.
It's good news.
Any questions? Okay, so I've pretty much exhausted the operational budgets. We're ready to request either major changes, like I said, on the building maintenance. That's something that we can always do as an amendment to the budget if we find that there's a way to make it work within the dollars that we have, and we can always bring that back. And that's probably going to take about 30, 40 days.
Thank you. Is there any other questions from the public before I close the public? Seeing none? Close the public. Council, your wishes. Councilman Raymond.
Yeah, just a question for the city manager. Are we borrowing any funds from the enterprise funds to sustain the general fund for this fiscal year?
The answer is, this fiscal year, we should be okay not to have to borrow funds. But obviously, previous years, we're sitting with I mean, our hope is that we reduce our ongoing liability to the sanitation fund by as much as $300,000. So we'd be the liability should be someplace about 2.5 million as opposed to 2.8.
Also, another comment to the department heads and city managers. You guys did a great job working on this year's budget. I just want to thank you guys. And for city manager again, if you've been here for a few weeks now, going on a month, and have had to dive into the budget and where we've been, where we are now, in your mind, have you formed an opinion, or do you have an opinion regarding why Merced is doing well and going up, Livingston's doing well and going up, Turlock's growing by leaps and bounds, and here we are, in the middle of those communities, and Los Banos is growing as well, and we're clawing, scratching, and fighting, trying to get back up just to breathe air. I mean, do you have anything that you've seen that can answer that at all?
Well, I think I can give you a couple of answers. One, it's a lot of it's historical. Because there was a decision made to use general fund to operate water and sewer and sanitation, and I can't give you all of the gory details, but I am, in talking to prior city managers and reading the newspaper, that's really where our problem has emanated from. If we were not in that kind of a position, we might be in a little better position to plan for the future. But I think the other one is that the inability to see some of the growth potential. I can tell you that I haven't looked at all of the places where we could add jobs, but I'll just give you a quick story. So when I got to, and I apologize for referring to our neighbors to the south, but I got to Merced, and the first thing I wanted to do, because automobiles are a big ticket item, generates almost 15% of Merced's sales tax. And actually with the addition of used car dealerships, it's actually, that percentage goes up. They're large ticket items. So went to the car dealers and I said, what can we do to help you get through this, what at the time we thought was just a minor downturn in the economy. And basically what they said is bring more people, bring jobs, because jobs will generate the money that people need to buy those cars. One of the problems that we have here is we don't have those big ticket items, so we really need to land probably a home improvement store. I don't think we aren't going to land car dealerships just because of the new regulations that they're under. So we're going to have to look for other ways to be ingenious with how we generate sales tax and property tax, and jobs are one of those, and good paying jobs. I mean, you shouldn't be service workers only. I mean, it's great to have 10 restaurants, but they don't generate anywhere near what just one car does. I hope that answered it. Maybe not as direct as you'd like, but I think that...
I was following.
Okay.
Do we have a motion or anything or direction you want to go, folks? I'll make a motion to adopt 2017-18 fiscal year budget.
Second.
Any questions? Councilman Vieira.
The changes that were made to the car notes, where, on my budget, they're still in here. Where are those?
Well, what we will do is with the adoption of the budget, we will do a final budget. at this point, we may not have enough time to create a new line item for car reimbursement or mileage reimbursement, but they would be where you see the 4,200 right now. And we will change the name.
And that can come with a budget amendment later on, then, correct?
Actually, we don't need an amendment. We'll just, once we change the line item description, then interdepartmental transfer of the dollars.
Any other questions? We have a motion and a second. Call for the question.
Raymond?
Well, this is a budget that's better than we've had in a few years. We still don't meet our 20% set aside, and we're still at potentially $2.5 million in debt, so it's not balanced. So unfortunately, I cannot support it, no.
Vieira?
It's hard because there's, gosh, it's like we've whittled it down to the bone, but I'm going to have to agree with Brian. I think there's still some things that we need to whittle more. We have to learn to live within our means, and that might not be good. But, you know, we have to run this. We just can't continue to live outside of our means. We're not making any forward, so no, I vote no.
Creighton?
Yes.
Vineyard?
Yes.
Motion does not pass.
Council have any other direction they want to go?
John, may I?
Yes, absolutely.
If we are not going to adopt the budget today, I need to get a direction from the city council. We have interfund loan from sewer to general fund, sanitation, and water. So those payments supposed to be made on July 1st. So do I get permission to at least make those payments? I don't know which direction we should take at this point.
Well, I mean, they're obligations we have, they need to be made, so while we continue to review and whittle this where we can, I think that we should stay current on all our obligations. I would make a motion that we give the finance director permission to move forward with paying the obligations current.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Call for the question.
Creighton?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Vieira?
Yes.
Vineyard?
We have to pay our bills. Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, and thank you for that. We clearly have to pay that obligation. But I will say that the longer we put off some of these decisions, we're not going to be able to provide some of the services that we'd like to provide. I mean, just one example is the tree contract. Can't do anything with the tree contract until we get a budget. And we can't, one item, I mean, this is a significant item. We appreciate your support on making that payment. But otherwise, we really do need to get to a point where we can start to function the city based on the way you want it functioning, which is responding to the citizens in whatever way we can. I'm not saying that we can't do anything. I'm just saying that we do need to get this done. And I need some help from you as to what else you want us to cut, because if you want to live within your means, and that's going to be a tough one. I mean, then it starts to be, do we not consider the new positions we've got in the budget? At least from my perspective. I think you've done a great job on whittling down expenditures. You've given me some good direction especially the ones that you feel needed to be looked at further. I'm more than willing to look at every line item further, but the next question is how much more can we pull out of that? And if we're really just talking the general fund, then how much more can we pull out of that and still operate, still have police on the street, and et cetera?
Councilwoman Vera?
Well, since I'm one voting no, I'll make a personal commitment to sit down with you and go over any more suggestions I have. And if I don't have any further suggestions I think that'll be helpful, then I'll move forward with approving what we've got. But I think we need to take one last look, and it's unfortunate we're in this situation that we are. But this is where we are.
City Attorney?
I was just going to ask for what the city manager asked for, which was direction, so that we can figure out where we need to make the changes that will satisfy the council. So he covered it. I think we should be good.
I just have a question. How does this affect our grants, or does it?
Up to this point, I don't think it really has much of an impact. When we're going to need the money is later in the year, and I think for right now, we're okay. We are going to have to come back to you, which is kind of an interesting comeback, but on several positions, we've got some police officers that are going through the system right now. By the next meeting, we probably will have them through their backgrounds. If we're going to fill positions, then we'll want to do that. And we've got some part-time positions in streets and parks that we really need to have some time with, and those aren't huge expenditures, but the report wasn't where I wanted it to be for you for tonight, so I didn't ask for that.
So is it possible you could, with council's input, you could bring this back to the next council meeting?
I would. I hope both, well, all of you. I'll take whatever any of you want, whether you voted yes or no.
Councilman Raymond? Okay.
One of my concerns is we have agreements and contracts that haven't been voted on or agreed upon yet, which is going to have fiscal impact to our general fund. So, I mean, I know we can do a budget amendment, but we kind of need to know where we're at to make a motion and vote, for me at least, to vote on it. We have to know where we're at. If we're going to do something and it's going to cost us an extra $100,000 or $150,000, we're only at a right around $200,000 surplus right now in our operating budget. So that's going to lower us now to $50,000. So we have to make sure we know all the figures, or at least the majority of them, because there's some big numbers that are still, to be played with.
Okay. Councilwoman Rivera. Vera. Been a long day. Councilwoman Vera.
And I know, John, you had mentioned we have some positions coming up. So I believe that, at least with the police officers, those are funded positions. So even without a approved budget, since those positions are already funded, can we not approve the hiring of the officers or anything that's already in here that's approved, not new positions?
Not with the resolution that you passed this evening on prohibiting hires and reclassifications.
I think what it read is though without council approval, so all we'd have to do is vote on it and approve it.
So I just have to come back to, and the other is I've got to assure you and myself that these are positions that were funded last year and kind of are operating under the continuing resolution. And that's not an unusual thing to do. It's just, we'll have to guarantee that.
Personally, I understand we have to have as much information as possible, the costs, revenue, et cetera. But we also have to remember, and we've done a lot of whittling, we also have to remember this is a budget. And when you budget something, even at home, that budget changes because of unforeseen circumstances. So while we can get all the information, we could delay and delay it, it could end up costing us in the long run. So we just want to make sure, I want to make sure we don't go so far that we lose money for some reason, or we don't get, or it costs us more to do the job. I agree we have to have the information, but there's a period of time where we have to say, let's get on with business and let's continue, because it is going to cost us in in the long run. So if you'll bring that back to us, possible next
Absolutely. I'll keep working on it.
next agenda item. Thank you.
City Council matters. Request to evaluate and consider a 3-day watering schedule.
Councilman Creighton, this was yours, I believe.
Yes, currently we're at a 2-day watering schedule, and I've had several residents ask if we could go back to the 3-day watering schedule, not so that they could water the 3 days a week, but when it falls on a Sunday, those addresses that fall on a Sunday, when they're at church or they're gone for the weekend to the coast or wherever, they don't get an opportunity to water, so they're down to 1 day a week. I think we need to modify this to allow 3 days a week with the same enforcement. We're wasting water, all that other stuff stays in place, but the opportunity that people can actually water their lawn.
Councilman Raymond?
I agree with Councilman Creighton, but I'd also like to add to it, changing the watering days, because I too have had the complaints about people going to church and not being able to water on Sunday, and then their yard's dying, bringing the property values down. So maybe a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday type deal, or however the council wants to do it. But the governor did declare that the drought emergency was over, and I mean, I may not know what I'm talking about 100%, but when you water more frequently, you use less water. The way we're doing it now with 2 days a week, we water, wait 4 days, the ground hardens, you have more runoff, you lose more water because it's not absorbing it because the ground's hard again. So we need to go back to watering more frequently, and you can do it for less time and have better results.
Councilwoman Vera?
Also, there's a concern, or I don't know if it's a concern, but when we were required to reduce our water usage by a certain amount, if we continue to go 2 days a week, if we fall into a drought situation again, and then again it's brought to the city to reduce your amount, we're going to have to reduce from the current amount we're using, which means what, 1 day a week now? So also, a lot of people that are watering 2 days a week, and I do this, Sunday morning, you get up at 6, and the first thing you do is go out and turn on the sprinklers. Well, you've only got 1 day to water, so I run my sprinklers twice, and on Wednesday I run my sprinklers twice. If I could go 3 days a week, they're automatic, you just run them once. Your ground does harden, you're doing it whatever you can to keep everything green and plush. I don't think it's saving any water by just going the 2 days a week.
I have a question for the attorney. Being as the ordinance is as it is, would this require us to relook at the redo the ordinance?
I don't recall if it's an ordinance or a resolution. It's an ordinance.
Probably should be an ordinance. We'll check as to whether it's a resolution or an ordinance. I think there's some, I will tell you that.
They said it is an ordinance, so we would need to revise the ordinance.
It's going to have to be revised. I think one of the things that we'll want to at least look at is our wells, the depth of where our water is, and a few other things, but we'll take a good hard look at it and give you an analysis of the consequences and maybe the unintended consequences.
And if I could ask for the specific direction, aside from looking into what the options are and the possible consequences, what days do you want to change? Just take Sunday out of the mix? Okay. And then 3 days a week, but take Sunday out of the mix? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Shaw, do you kind of have any idea what how that might affect or how our wells are doing?
In the long run, it might be better on the wells if you go 3 days a week. Because right now, when you're doing 2 days a week, you're putting that big strain because everybody wants to water those 2 days. So if you go 3 days, they're not watering as much, so it might really, in the long run, help the wells out.
Then, Mayor Pro Tem, also, what the city manager said, he wants to look at the historical data. We used to just be a free-for-all before the drought, and so the static well levels, so you can put those in layman terms, because a lot of people misinterpret those because of the footage. So when you provide the data, the city manager show the drawdown, the static level and the drawdown. You know what I'm talking about for the wells?
You want static and residual.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
And make sure that, put it in terms that everybody can understand it, because most people don't understand that, you know, when you turn the wells on, they go deeper instead of,
Yeah, well, and a lot of times, if some of our wells are kind of, the screens are getting dirty, to where you kind of get a false reading,
right,
because you're pulling so much water out, it's not be able to come back in as quick. So it might drop down further than what it really is, because if the screen's being dirty, the water can't come in as quick. That's why we just been doing just the residual on, with the wells off, on what the level is.
okay.
So, question to the council is, or do you want to look at the hours as well? Or do you want to leave the hours as they are?
I think the hours are fine where they're at.
Councilman Raymond?
I think the hours are fine the way they are.
So we're simply switching Sunday to a non-watering day.
Yeah.
However, the odd and even fall out on the rest of the week is fine.
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem,
Yes.
on that question you just asked, what are the hours again, to clarify that?
can
Because we
water-
have the peak PG&E pricing that we're trying to avoid with the wells, right? That's why we did the solar and look at it, trying to save money. So we try to miss the 2 to 6 PM mark is what we're trying to avoid
The-
as a agency.
The hours right now are, you can water from midnight of your day, 12:01, so if it's a Tuesday, 12:01 Tuesday to 10 a.m.
Okay,
Then you can start watering again from 5 p.m. till midnight.
so we do need to change the hours, so we get out of the peak pricing for PG&E or MID or whatever, so that 5 o'clock it's in the wrong area, so we need to,
I understand that. Part of that was, we had massive people that don't feel safe when the hours change and it gets darker sooner, of going out and watering. A lot of them water by hand.
so
And
maybe,
that's why we dropped
for
it
the
back.
attorney, maybe a clause for the winter months or something, you could do the 5 PM, you know what I'm trying to do.
Yep.
So,
Councilman
I
Raymond?
do.
Mayor Pro Tem already kind of said it, but we do have a lot of people that go out and water by hand, so I know for them, it'd be tough to get up at 4 or 5 a.m. and go water, or out at night. My grandma being one of them, and like I always say, if it's bad for my grandma, it's bad for everybody.
Any other comments on this? Is there any comments from the public? I'll open it up for a public discussion. Do you have any comments? Seeing none, we'll close it.
So I've got, and I apologize, I don't know the system for council. Do we need a motion and a second, or is it just the person who requested it?
I think I just want this brought back as an agenda item with modified hours for wintertime and the deletion of Sunday,
So it'd be,
and let staff figure out what days of the week work best for,
bring it back for discussion and action, basically.
yes, discussion and possible action.
So if you could do that just by a motion to bring it back, then that'd be great.
Okay, motion to bring it back.
Councilman Raymond?
I know I'm out there sometimes. This might be one of those. Would it be possible to incentivize for people that go to the wireless sprinkler timers? If it's raining, you have it set up anyways, your sprinkler's going to go on. But with this, it reads the weather and what's going on based on the information superhighway, and they won't come on. And so it's a way to save water when it's raining. Because I know in my neighborhood, we had a lot of people that are watering in the, downpours.
There are a lot of timers out there, systems that have that built in, where you can change it anywhere from 100% where rain water all the time down to, if you get 10% rain, it'll shut off.
Okay, that's just
So
too
they
fancy.
are
I
out
just found
there.
out about this, and I was blown away.
Yeah, they are out there.
Actually, there are incentives to encourage it, and I know during the drought that there was funds available through the state to do that. We'll look at it.
Okay.
We have a second on the motion?
Yeah, we got it from.
Second.
Call for the question.
Viera?
Yes.
So, just a second. Creighton?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Vineyard?
Yes.
Motion passes. City council comments.
Councilman Creighton.
I just wanted to let some of the other agencies and government officials, since we have a supervisor in the audience, we're going to be hosting the city-county dinner September, and it'll be our local distiller, Dave Souza. He's going to do a presentation on farm to bottle and what it takes to grow sweet potato and turn those into sweet potato vodka. So it should be a good program that night. And also with potholes around town, what's the best number, city manager, for people to report? Okay, what's that number, Brian?
357-370.
So if you have the pothole complaints, call 357-6370 and ask for Brian Shaw. I love taking those complaints, but he gets paid to do that.
Anything else?
No.
Councilwoman Vieira.
Got it right.
I'm getting there.
I've eliminated 10 calls a week. Yeah, I just would like to say that I know I've talked to Mark a couple times this week. I know CAL FIRE is working lots of hours, very hard. We have a very large fire right now. That's where Mayor's at, and prayers and safety to all you and your men and women out there. And yeah, we truly appreciate everything you did, or you're doing. Also I know we have PD out there working patrol, keeping people in and out the way they're supposed to be. So also to our police department. And I just also want to say that, working with the budget, it's really difficult because you have to draw a line in between the people that work here and the numbers that are on the page. And it's really hard because we're reprimanded and given so much direction that we cannot be involved in personnel, or we have to take the personal aspect out of it and just look at the hard numbers. So it's really hard, trying to come up and balance this budget. And I know I keep saying live within our means. It's unfortunate we're really suffering for many, many years when I feel like we're very careless with our money. So once we reach the point of kind of balancing, there will be good years ahead of us, and that'll be a much funner time. But in the meantime, just have to tighten up a little bit more.
Thank you. Councilman Raymond.
I would like to echo the sentiments of Councilwoman Vieira regarding all those involved in the fire, those who've lost in the fire, and those fighting it. My condolences and my prayers for the continued support. Public Works. I've been pretty hard on you guys, but I got to say, fantastic job. You've really been doing well. So I want to say thank you to you and everybody out there for what they've been doing. I'm happy. That doesn't happen too often. And also, Scott McBride. This will be your last council meeting, if I understand correctly. Yeah, yes, here. I just want to thank you for your service to the city, all you've done. Merced's going to enjoy having you. I've already tried to poison the well with Steve Kerrigan, but he still wants you. So I just want to say congratulations and thank you for your time here.
Brian's so happy he actually wore a tie this night.
I did.
That's good. Yeah. Yellow stands out with your complexion. Myself, I have to echo you. I mean, I'm from Mariposa. So, and I have relatives there. Actually, 2 of them spent the last week with me because they were evacuated. So, it was a joy, absolutely. But I was glad they got to go back, and their house was safe. It's unfortunate there were lives lost. My understanding is there was a couple of heart attacks during the fire of people when they were trying to escape. There was a firefighter injured due to an accident, minor from what they say, so that's good. It's dangerous for all emergency personnel, fire, police, ambulance. Fortunately, we don't live in an area where that kind of conflagration can happen down here, although the houses are close together. But my recommendation is if you have a lot, you have property that needs clearance, get out and clear it. And get out and clear it early. If you have property that butts up to somebody else's and it's an empty field, talk to that landowner and get it cleared, get your fence cleared. I think the biggest issue, besides the growth and the dead brush, was a lot of clearance up in that area. Fire, I've seen fire do some really strange things, and obviously this one did as well. Mr. McBride, we've talked. I do want to thank you in public for your service and your friendship. The budget, as Ms. Fiera said, is hard to do. We all, and I think we try to do it as much as possible, is remove ourselves emotionally. That's always a continuing process. And I hope this people of this city will continue to support us. Call us with the good as well as the bad, because we do like to hear good too. But and thank you everyone for tonight. Meeting's adjourned.